Hi, I'm Serena Anand-Chancellor. I'm a NASA astronaut, and this is Ask NASA, and I'm ready for your questions. All right, so first question, what is Artemis, or what is the Artemis program? So the Artemis program is our lunar exploration program. We will get to the South Pole of the Moon by 2024, landing the first American woman and the next man. Why are we doing this? Well, in order for us to head towards Mars, we need a special place where we can practice, essentially develop robust engineering technologies, figure out how well the human does with long-duration spaceflight, learn how to build habitats, and we do all of this on the moon. Essentially, we practice. It's an engineering battleground, so we can go to Mars. What do you think it'll be like to go on an Artemis flight? Well, let me tell you, this would actually be really cool to go on an Artemis flight because we'd be heading to the moon. Now, what vehicle will we be traveling in? Well, it's actually the Orion vehicle right here. And some of you may recognize this. This is similar to the old Apollo capsules, but it is bigger, it is better. I've actually climbed inside the mock-ups, seen the systems, very modern systems. This is what will be taking us back to the moon. We're going to have the first American woman on the moon.
Serena, did you always want to be an astronaut?
I did, probably since I was 8 years old. My dad finally asked me one day, do you want to be an astronaut? And I said, yes.
What one personal item did you take to space?
Oh, I took multiple personal items. It wasn't just one. Funny enough, I took a back scratcher because you need a back scratcher wherever you go.
What food would you take to the moon?
Oh, easy. Cheeseburger, French fries, every time.
Yum. If you were in a dance-off with an alien, what song would you pick?
That's easy. It'd be Michael Jackson's Billie Jean. We played this song on the launch pad.
What do you miss the most about Earth when you're in space?
I missed feeling the Earth. So I miss the wind. I miss the rain. I miss the smell of the Earth, the smell of the grass. These are things you just can't imitate on station.
Is it scary being in space?
It's not scary being in space. I mean, it's your home, and it's the size of a 5-bedroom house. It's absolutely huge, and your friends are up there with you, so what's better than that?
Do you know how cool you are? Because we think you're amazing.
You know, as my husband says, I still take out the trash like everyone else.
So you're a doctor. Can you fix this man?
Well, I'm an internist, not a surgeon, but I will try. Ooh, I've got to do this carefully. I don't want to set off. Yes, see, so now. Nope, that's it.
Do you have a question for NASA? Send your questions to our experts on Twitter using hashtag AskNASA.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lindsay Thornton from NASA's Office of STEM Engagement. And we are excited to partner with the STEM Next Opportunity Fund and the Afterschool Alliance to highlight STEM and showcase women in STEM careers through the Girls Moonshot program. Now, joining me today is an amazing woman in STEM. She has one of the coolest jobs on this planet and off it. Join me in welcoming Jasmin Moghbeli. Hey, Jasmine.
Hey, Lindsay, thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. Now, Jasmine hails from New York and has a master's degree in aerospace engineering and an impressive career as a pilot for the U.S. Marine Corps. She has completed her astronaut training and is now eligible for mission assignments. Now, at the beginning of our program, just a second ago, you saw Serena Anand-Chancellor, another one of our astronauts, speaking about NASA's Artemis mission. NASA is planning to land the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2024 through the Artemis program. This mission will test technologies that will eventually take us, well, probably you guys, to Mars. To achieve this goal, we need you guys, the Artemis generation, our future scientists, engineers, mathematicians, and technicians. And that means our program today is really all about you guys, students and after-school programs around the United States. And we do need your help. Your questions will help determine what we should discuss in today's program. So, welcome once again, Jasmine. We are so happy that you could join us.
I appreciate it, Lindsay, and I'm super excited to be here with all you young ladies and gentlemen out there to talk about Artemis and STEM and anything else.
Excellent. So could you share maybe a little bit about your experience so far as a NASA astronaut?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the first about 2 years I was in training, our initial training, and it's really exciting because as an astronaut, you get to do a little bit of everything. You're the doctor, you're the scientist, you're the mechanic. And so, you learn how to do spacewalks, and we learn Russian, and we fly in T-38 jets. So it was really, challenging at times, the training, but also really fun and exciting, and almost like summer camp for adults.
I'm a little jealous. So when you're not flying or training to be an astronaut, what do you do in your free time?
So I've grown up playing sports and loving the outdoors. And so here we end up going to the beach on Galveston a lot. I really like paddleboarding and basically any water activity I enjoy. And then additionally, I really like dancing. So I've grown up loving dancing. I've never done it professionally or anything, but I like to put on some music and dance. And really playing any sort of sport or even games, card games and board games.
Nice.
Fun.
I love dancing too.
Nice.
So a lot of our students on today are in after-school programs. Did you do any after-school programs or extracurricular activities that, maybe help shape who you are today?
Yes. My problem was probably that I wanted to do too many extracurricular activities. So first off, I played sports probably from, I think, second grade through college. So basketball, volleyball, and lacrosse I played growing up. And then I did several STEM programs, actually, after school. We had, we called it Mathletes, basically doing different math problems and competing against other local schools, Science Olympiad, where we'd kind of solve different engineering problems and again, compete against other schools to see how they solve them. I did, Youth for Political Awareness and doing things like that, Model United Nations. So several different programs that I think all shaped me in a different way and all helped me kind of progress and get to where I am now.
Nice. Now, I have to ask, this one's my question, not going to lie. If you were the first woman to step foot on the moon, because of course no women have stepped foot on the moon yet, in 2024, what would you say as you stepped out onto the lunar surface?
Well, Lindsay, I think it's good that if that were to happen, I still have a few years to figure that out. I'm mostly nervous. I would be too overwhelmed with emotions to speak at all. So maybe you can help me if that ever happens.
Yeah, it's a really hard question. I don't know what I would say either. That's a lot of pressure. But we do hope to see you on the moon at some point.
I appreciate it.
So before we go to student questions, if you're a student, feel free to put a question for Jasmine in the chat box, and we'll be passing those along in a little bit. But before we do that, it takes a huge team of people with many, many different skill sets and backgrounds for NASA to find success. So during today's program, we'd like to introduce you to a few other women who work for NASA and see a little bit of what they actually do. So let's start with Yvette Rivera Aponte, project engineer at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. She is helping create hardware necessary for the Artemis mission. Let's take a closer look.
I'm Yvette Rivera Ponte, and I'm a project engineer at the NASA Kennedy Space Center, where I support the new Space Launch System. I grew up in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, and I currently live in Orlando, Florida. My grandfather was the first person to introduce me to engineering, and I discovered I can combine my love for math and space in this field. I earned my bachelor's degree in civil engineering and my master's degree in structural engineering. My advice to students, never give up on your dreams.
One more time, make some noise for your NASA All-Star STEM team.
Okay, now it is time for your questions. You asked and we shall answer. Jasmine, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Our first question is from St. Louis, Missouri, and they're wondering what made you actually want to become an astronaut? Was there something that specifically inspired you, or were you originally thinking you might do something else?
For me, it started at a pretty young age. I was in 6th grade and we did a book report, and I chose to do mine on Valentina Tereshkova, so the first woman in space, a Russian cosmonaut. And we even got to dress up like the person and pretend we were that person for the day in school. So my mom helped me build a really cool space outfit, or I thought so at the time. And so that was when I first remember saying definitively, I want to be an astronaut. And I think it excited me because it's really something adventurous, and, traveling to space sounded really cool as a kid. And then, as I grew up and learned more about it and the people who have been in this field before, it was something that it just never went away. And it was something I wanted to do from that age on.
Awesome. Now, I imagine that astronaut training is actually pretty challenging. Was there anything, we've got a question, what made you hang in there when it got tough and not quit?
Yes, we have a class with people from very different backgrounds. So I think everyone struggled with something different. For me, what I found the hardest was actually also one of the coolest parts of the training, which is practicing for spacewalks and training how to do a spacewalk. And we have the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, which is basically a really big pool with a life-size mock-up of the International Space Station. And we'd get in the suit and we'd have to practice. And I found it really challenging at first because you watched astronauts do it. I'd seen them before. They made it look easy, but everything's so different. And, every time you have to grip your hands, it's against pressure. It's almost like you're squeezing one of those stress balls or something every time you want to use your hands. And, you have to learn how to kind of move in the suit with the different joints. I'm doing the robot now. And so I thought that was the hardest part of training. And it really helped to have my classmates there encouraging me, as well as I had mentors in the astronaut corps, some of the experienced astronauts who would watch my videos with me and go through and figure out what I could do better the next time. So really, it was a lot of people, and even the divers, we have the divers supporting us as we train in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, and they would give me little tips on what to do better the next time. So really, it was people that helped me get through it and finally get to where I needed to be.
That's awesome that you have such a great support system. Now, we got a question, and I predicted this one. We were talking about it earlier. We see the guitars in the background. What is your favorite song?
My favorite song? All right, that's a good one. Probably Stevie Wonder, I Just Called to Say I Love You.
Nice. Can you play
Stevie
it?
Wonder fan.
Can you play it?
No, not that one, actually.
Okay. Well, something to work on, big goals, because you don't have anything else to do. All right, we got another one. What are spacesuits made of? That's actually a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. So there are different layers to the spacesuit, and they each, kind of serve different purposes. So you have what we call kind of like the bladder, and that maintains the pressure and the oxygen in the suit, because obviously, on the other side is the vacuum of space. And, so you want the bladder that keeps your oxygen inside. And then we have it's called a TMG, so thermal micrometeoroid garment, kind of a tongue twister there. But that, in space, for example, when the astronauts right now are on the International Space Station, they're orbiting around the Earth every 90 minutes. And so they're going through a day cycle with the sun, getting very hot, and then going through a night cycle pretty much every about 45 minutes. And so that TMG layer helps to control the temperature, regulate the temperature, and also protect against micrometeors. So, just a little dust or speck in space that's traveling really fast can actually cause a lot of damage. So that layer also helps protect against that.
All right. So since we're on the topic of dangers in space, we've got a question from Buffalo, New York, and they're asking, what are you most afraid of when going into space? And how do you think you're going to, work on handling that?
I think for me, what I'm most scared of is not being prepared for something that comes up in the mission, and me doing something that could either hurt another crew member or the mission that we're trying to do. And so really the way to kind of prevent against that is to just train and train and train so that I make sure I feel confident. I know all the systems on my spacecraft, and I know every step of the procedures I'm doing, and that I'm prepared to respond to anything that happens when I go up there.
This segues perfectly. Another student was asking, how long do you train for your first mission?
Yeah, so it depends. It's usually about from the time you get assigned to a mission and you train and then go. It's about like 1.5 to 2 years usually for the first mission, and it just kind of builds on the training we've already done for the specific things you're going to be doing on that mission. Right now we have so many different spacecraft that we can fly on or that we're going to be able to fly on soon. And what are you doing on that mission? Are you, going to the space station? Are you going to the moon? Or what are you doing? So that time lets you train for those specific things.
Gotcha. And speaking of flying, we know you've had a long history of flight experience. You're very, adventurous. But some students were asking, what is your background? What did you go to school for? And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but maybe you could give us a little more detail.
Sure. So after high school, I went to MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I studied aerospace engineering there. And right after that, I joined the Marine Corps. And so it wasn't till 10 years later that I went back to do my master's, and I did that at Naval Postgraduate School. And that was also in aerospace engineering.
Very appropriate for your job. Now, one of their students is asking what types of responsibilities you have on a mission. It's a good question.
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit about it before, but when you go to space as an astronaut, you may not have a doctor on the mission, or you may not have, you have to do a little bit of everything. So, for example, on the International Space Station right now, we're doing a lot of science experiments. So you have to play the role of a scientist. When something needs to be either repaired or we do like preventative maintenance on it outside the station, you have to be a spacewalker. If someone's feeling sick, you might be the doctor for that mission that needs to take care of them. And so you have many different roles. And then when we start talking about going to the moon or Mars, you're the geologist. You have to know which rocks do I pick up, which ones are interesting. And so you have many different roles, and they are somewhat dependent on what mission you actually go on.
That's a really good point. I don't know that everyone thinks about that. So we've got a question. How extensive is the astronaut interview process?
the astronaut. So I'll talk a little bit about the actual selection process that I went through. So at first, you just submit your resume on, it's USA Jobs, and you wait for several months, and you don't know if things are going well or not. And then the kind of next step was they reached out to some references. So you had to put some references. So for me, they reached out to my past, professors and people I served with in the Marine Corps. And then again, you wait for several months. And then eventually I got a call saying, hey, we'd like you to come in for the first round of interviews. And so the first round, and they were done here at Johnson Space Center, was about 3 days, and we came in groups of 10, so you got to meet other people who were candidates and applying as well. And then you go home and you wait again for several months, and then we got another call to come in for the final round of interviews, and that was a week long. So, the actual interviews that you come in for, there's, when I did it, at least, there was one kind of 3-day interview and then 1 week-long interview that we did. And then you wait some more, and then luckily I was one of the ones who found out I made it, so.
Yes, congratulations. And I'm sure that everyone out there could use a little patience in their life. So, that's what NASA's really striving for there. Oh, here's a cute question. Do you celebrate holidays in space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you can probably find some videos on the internet of astronauts celebrating different holidays. And we also celebrate because, on the International Space Station, we have our partners from the European Space Agency, from Japan, from Canada, and from Russia. And so we'll celebrate each other's holidays with one another as well up there. And so, you'll see people with, lots of American flags on the 4th of July or holiday decorations. Sometimes people dress up for Halloween. I think there's been a gorilla suit up there before. So we definitely like to celebrate the holidays. I think it's something that connects us back with, our friends and family and what we're used to back home.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were talking about the experiments on the International Space Station. What types of experiments do you run in space, and how do they help us down here on Earth or future missions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we talked a little bit about training earlier. One thing I didn't mention is that we do a lot of training in the field of biology as well. And so something that a lot of medical type experiments are done in space. And some of those are to help us find out, we're also test subjects. So we're not just the ones doing the experiment, but there are also experiments being done on us while we're in space. And so we're trying to figure out how do the different impacts of space, not having the forces of gravity affecting you, and having radiation out there, how do those things impact us so that we know when we go further and further as we look to go to the moon and we look to go to Mars, how humans handle those things. Kate Rubins just launched last week, and so she was one of the first ones to sequence DNA in space. We look at different creating cell tissues. So here on Earth, when we try to replicate making cell tissues in a container, it comes out too deep because we have gravity pulling it down. But in space, we can use that weightlessness effect to create 3D cell tissues that are more representative of what we'd actually see here on Earth in our bodies. And so there are so many different things that we can do that then have applications here on Earth. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we do things by accident and find things out by accident that end up helping us here on Earth.
That's really cool. Now, someone was asking, do you need to know other languages to speak to your crewmates on the ISS, on the International Space Station?
Yeah, I just had Russian class this morning. I had it yesterday. We have, one-on-one Russian lessons. So right now on the International Space Station, there's we have, I mentioned it before, but we have Russian members, we have people from the Japanese Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency, and the European Space Agency. And the, Russian segment runs, in Russian. So when we launch on a Soyuz, we have to know Russian in order to execute the procedures on the Soyuz and also to communicate with our crew members. And they likewise learn English. So between the two of us, we'll be able to figure out a language that works.
Meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Are you good at Russian?
I really enjoy learning Russian. It's very difficult, so I don't know that I'd say I'm good at it, but I enjoy learning it, and I like talking, so it gives me incentive.
That's great. Now, here's a great question for our students out there. What steps did you take in middle and high school that you think helped you become an astronaut?
Yeah, so, I think if you were to look at who's in the astronaut office today, you have people with such different backgrounds. You have, we have men and women, we have people who are military and people who are not in the military, people who are scientists and engineers. And so there are lots of different things you can do to get here. For me personally, in middle school and high school, as I mentioned, I did do a lot of extracurricular activities that I think were helpful, like doing the Mathletes, doing Science Olympiad. I would even go, on weekends, once a week, I'd go to a local college and we'd solve different math problems. I did another program where after school once a week, we'd go to another school and do different science experiments and things like that. And so I think all those things definitely helped, but I also think playing sports helped. You've talked about it a bit earlier, Lindsay, but NASA is everything we do takes a huge team of people, and being able to work together with other people is absolutely critical in this job, just as much as, knowing how to solve the equation to get us into orbit or whatever. So I think all those things did play a part. I am going to sneak in some advice here, though. I think you should do things you enjoy and things you love doing. Don't do something just because you're trying to get to become an astronaut or whatever it is. Do things you really like doing.
That's really good advice. Now, apparently we've been getting lots of questions about food in space. So they want to know how many times a day you eat in space and what's on the menu.
Yeah, okay, so I think, similar to on Earth, the astronauts are normally scheduled three meals a day where they actually, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then they, again, similar to on Earth, will snack sometimes in between. In terms of what's on the menu, it's a pretty diverse menu. They've got a lot of different things up there. And so, chickens and steaks, and people apparently really like hot sauce up there. So a lot of hot sauce is used on things. And I've heard tortillas are better because you don't have crumbs floating everywhere. So peanut butter. It's a very wide menu of things.
I've heard you can request, a favorite item or meal. Is there something you would request if you went up?
I might try to request a favorite Persian dish or something.
Ooh. What kind?
Yeah, so, one of my favorites, it's called ghormeh sabzi, but it's basically a stew with, you normally eat it with rice, and it has, meat and different types of greens and beans. So if they could give me some of that would be great.
Oh, yeah. That sounds good. All right. So we had a question earlier. They were wondering what your favorite planet is.
Yeah, my favorite planet, people sometimes don't like this answer, but I have to say Earth. I mean, when you look at the planet Earth, it's just so beautiful. And how can you not love it? And plus, that's where we all are. So everyone I know and love pretty much is on planet Earth. So I have to go with Earth.
That's a really good answer. You can't replace it. You just can't replace it with anything else. All right. I'm going to throw out one or two more, and I believe they'd like to know what would you do for fun in space?
Oh boy. Well, I've heard it's really fun to just kind of zoom through the modules, and maybe sometimes you might use another crew member as a surfboard or something like that to cruise through. So, I think that would be fun. People definitely play with their food in space. You can form liquid bubbles, or, it's, catching food in your mouth takes on a whole different meaning. So I think there's probably going to be a lot of fun things to do in space. And I'm interested to see how it will be trying to dance in space.
Ooh, yes, I'd like to see that in action. You got to take some video for us. All right, so all the moms out there, this does not mean that you guys can go home and play with your food. You're not in space.
Right.
All right, we've got one more. How has your experience flying in the military helped prepare you for being an astronaut?
I could talk about this for a real long time, so I'll try not to go on for too long. But there are a lot of things that carry over. One, flying in the military, you're used to being in stressful environments where the decisions you make are really life or death decisions. And, that's the business of space, and human exploration in space is very much a risky business. And so I think that carries over, being able to, know your aircraft is just like being able to know your spacecraft. So I think that's really important. And then, the teamwork aspect I talk about. So, I always flew as a crew, and usually with another aircraft by my side. And so knowing how to communicate with other people and lead when necessary and follow when necessary, and communicate in a clear way is really important. Speaking, I used to be I had a lot of stage fright and used to be really scared of public speaking, but in the Marine Corps, I had to brief over and over and over again for every flight. And so that kind of got me over that. And then as a test pilot in the Marine Corps, I also learned a lot about, I talked about space is a risky business, but we don't just go and do things because they're dangerous. We take a lot of time thinking about how can we mitigate that risk and decrease the risk. And so we do a lot of that in space as well. And so I think all of those things and so many more have carried over.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you pointed out that you were afraid of public speaking, because you clearly aren't anymore. You're great to talk to. And to all our students out there, if there's something that, scares you, like she said, practice it over and over and over again, and eventually it won't be such a big deal. Exactly. So, Jasmine, we're going to give you a little bit of a break. And let's take a moment and learn about another amazing woman who works for NASA. Her name is Nakisha Davis, and she is an aerospace engineer in Maryland. She helps design and control spacecraft. So let's take a closer look at what she does.
I'm Nakisha Davis. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. My love for math and science really stemmed from NASA-sponsored programs I attended in middle school. I have college degrees from Spelman College and the University of Alabama in Huntsville in mathematics, aerospace engineering, and systems engineering. I work as an aerospace engineer at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, where I develop and test hardware and software for point and control systems of spacecrafts. My advice for students is to never give up. Your efforts will definitely pay off in the end.
One more time, make some noise for your NASA All-Star STEM team.
All right, to learn more about the Artemis mission and engineering, we have challenged you guys to design and build a crew module, just like NASA is doing with our Orion crew module for the Artemis mission. And you can actually find this activity, like you see online, at stem.nasa.gov or at the link on the screen. And last year, we actually had some after-school students just like you guys working on a similar challenge through a partnership with 21st Century Community Learning Centers and the U.S. Department of Education. And so to give you guys some ideas for your Orion crew modules, let's take a look at them building and testing their module designs. And then while we do that, Jasmine, you've probably been around the Orion crew module, I'm going to guess. Can you tell us anything about your experiences with it as it's being designed and built?
Sure, absolutely. So first off, for those who aren't familiar with Orion, the Orion capsule is the spacecraft that is going to carry humans from the Earth to the lunar orbit around the moon, and from there they'll then be able to descend down and land on the moon itself. And so I've gotten to work with the Orion program in a few different ways. As I mentioned before, as a test pilot, I've evaluated a lot of different new aircraft and new systems, and so I've gotten to take a look at the different displays on Orion and evaluate those and look at the actual crew module and how are we placing everything so they're most convenient for when we're going to need them, and when determining how to actually operate within the crew module so that it's most efficient. And so, right now, just recently, the Orion capsule for the Artemis 1 mission was at Kennedy Space Center, and they just installed the solar panels on it. So definitely an exciting time for Orion.
Excellent. Now we are going to go ahead and meet one more member of the NASA team. She's actually a friend of mine. Her name is Monica Guzik. She's a mechanical engineer in Cleveland, Ohio, supporting research experiments on the International Space Station. Let's take a look.
I'm Monica Guzik. I'm from Avon, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. I graduated from Rose-Hulman with a degree in chemical engineering, and I now work as a gas and fluid systems engineer at the NASA Glenn Research Center, where I design and develop new technologies for everything from cryogenics to fuel cells to experiments on the International Space Station. I love engineering because it lets me solve new and challenging problems every day. And my advice to students, always work hard, follow your passion, and never, ever give up.
One more time, make some noise for your NASA All-Star STEM team.
All right, so a big thank you to Yvette, Nakisha, and Monica for sharing a bit about what they do in their different engineering careers at NASA. But we know that, like we've mentioned before, it takes a big team to support Orion, to support Artemis. Jasmine, would you want to mention any of the different NASA careers that help support those huge projects?
Yeah, sure, Lindsay. And I will say this, I don't think I truly had an appreciation for how many people it takes to get these programs to where they need to be and to fly humans in space. It really takes so many people. And so we've mentioned a bit about the engineers and engineers working on many different systems on the Orion or any of the other spacecraft. We have the life support systems, the avionics, the power systems, the communication, the navigation and guidance. So there are so many different things just in engineering. And then you have, all the people, the technicians that are actually putting it together, right? So everything these engineers design, someone actually has to be the hands that puts those things together and welds metal and puts in all the cables and all the displays and all the avionics. So we have all the technicians doing those things. We have, test teams that are making sure. I talked about space is a risky business, and we want to make sure before we actually put humans on these spacecraft and fly them in the vacuum of space that we know they're going to do what they need to do. So we have a lot of people figuring out, hey, what tests do we need to do, both individually for each system and then eventually integrating that all into one larger system. And then for us, the crew, we have many people that are training us. So we have, teachers and instructors that are teaching us about the different systems and what do we need to know as the ones actually flying and operating these vehicles. And then I think another big part is the flight control team. So you think about, mission control down here on Earth, all those people that are helping the crew that's actually on the spacecraft itself. They've already begun training for Artemis 1. They've been doing it for several months. And so, as you said, Lindsay, it takes a huge team of people, and some of those are engineers, but there are a lot of other people involved as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. At NASA, we have pretty much every job you can think of, I would imagine. I know a lot of people don't think about the people who do the budget, or the lawyers, or
the people who are, getting what we do out there so that the American people know what we're doing, and having showing it in a public way. What are we doing? Because we're here for the citizens. We're not doing this for ourselves, and so that's also an important part. So
that's true, and a lot of those people are on this call right now, and we love them. All right, I have one more question for you. Now, a lot of our students, they're going to run into different challenges that they face growing up. They might struggle with one thing or another. I know Monica shared with me that she struggled with math as a kid. Now, I know you didn't struggle with math, but was there something you did struggle with, and how did you overcome that? What did you do?
Yeah, so it's funny you say I didn't struggle with math. So I thought going into college I was really good at math because I had always done well in math growing up. And I get to college thinking, math's easy. It comes naturally to me. And I had my first test at MIT, and it was a math test. And I studied very hard for it. And when I got my test back, I had a 24 at the top. And I was like, what is it out of? And it was out of 100. And I, started looking around like, well, at least did everyone fail, or was it just me? And I see 80s and 90s on other people's papers. And so imagine, your first test in college, you think you're smart, you think you're going to be good. And I've studied really hard. And so I was really quite terrified that I wasn't even going to make it through college at that point. And I think that was probably the first big failure of many, quite frankly. There was a time in flight school where they didn't think I was going to make it to my solo because I kept getting lost in the aircraft. And so I think there have been a lot of things throughout. I talked earlier about the struggles I had in the neutral buoyancy lab during my astronaut training. And so I think every time that's happened, I was scared initially. It's definitely scary when you fail at something that's really important to you and you really care about. But every time I knew that if I just kept trying and asked for help and tried different things, and if I really wanted it, I knew I could do it in the end. And just, I think having that belief was something really important that helped me through, and is important for all you young, girls and boys out there to know. If you're failing, it just means you're doing something hard and you're pushing yourself. It's not the end. It's just something to learn from and move on from.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And I think we've all had those same moments where we thought, no problem. And then,
Yeah.
And, we have a lot of ladies on the call, young ladies, and they were wondering, did you face any adversity as a woman going through all these different things that you went through to become an astronaut?
Yeah, I think like everything else, there have been positives about being a woman in a male-dominated field, and there have been times when, there have been some negatives. And I think in some ways it's easy to stand out as a woman when you're the only woman in your unit or the only woman at your job. It's just, are you standing out in a good way or a bad way? And that's to you to decide. And there were definitely times, for example, in the military on deployment, where I was always the only female Cobra pilot on all 3 of my deployments. And there are times when that becomes difficult because I didn't share a tent with all the guys who were my peers and were living together. And so there were times where it was a little difficult and I'd feel a bit left out. But again, like I said, there are ways in which that also, I think, could be a positive and help you stand out. And I hope that in the future we'll see more and more of you young ladies joining, the field of STEM. And so it won't be, we won't be such a minority in the future. And I think we are seeing that more and more.
Absolutely. Yes, we are definitely seeing the balance. It's sort of starting to balance out. And that just requires more of you ladies to get on over here and start working for NASA. All right, before we go, we really appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us today, Jasmine. And we hope we'll see you walking on the moon. Do you have any closing advice for our students? You've given a lot of great advice, so it's okay if you don't. But do you have any closing advice for them?
I think just, I mentioned it earlier, but find things that you're passionate about and that you love doing and things that excite you. And that doesn't mean they're going to be easy just because you like doing them. They still may be very hard, but because you're so excited about them, it will push you. When you do fail at something, you'll want to keep pushing through until you're successful and you have that kind of feeling of gratification of, wow, I just did something really hard and really challenging. And I think it's really important to love what you're doing, and that will take you a long way. And whatever it is, even if it's not in the field of STEM, but we'd like some of you to come to the field of STEM.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Jasmine, for joining us. We know you got a busy schedule, so we're going to say goodbye. And for all of you out there, don't forget to check out nasa.gov/join Artemis to find other great programs and activities. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
50 years ago, we went to the moon. We called it Apollo.
What many people don't know is that Apollo had a twin.
She was a woman named Artemis,
goddess of the moon.
We are returning to the moon
as a new generation of explorers.
This time to stay.
And to prepare to achieve humanity's next giant leap of sending the first human missions to Mars.
We believe our course will redefine what is possible.
That we would discover life-saving,
earth-changing science.
And that the challenges ahead will inspire generations.
This is our manifest.
For all who wondered if we could return.
For all who dreamed of pressing beyond.
This is your calling.
We go for all of America.
We go.
We go as the Artemis generation.
We go.